Alrighty. Hi everyone, so today we're going to play some Napoleon Total War and go over some cavalry tactics. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So guys, for army compositions, basically, some nations have better cavalry in terms of others. So if you consider France, France has the best cavalry you can get possibly in the game, anything ranging from their supreme heavy cavalry to their guard lancers and even like their light cavalry. So I'll cover basically the horses and cavalry that you'd see from the French side. So right off the bat, a good method to use is kind of putting your cavalry in the back unless you're doing any strategic charges before you start the battle, that is. So usually in a map like this, some good strategic locations to take are especially on the flanks, sending cavalry through the forest where they're protected against any counter charges, because charging through trees or vegetated areas actually hinder horses. But for this purpose, we'll just go into some battle tactics. So we won't worry too much about positioning for the most part. However, I will say this, that if your opponent brings any kind of howitzer artillery or something, to make sure that your cavalry units are spread out enough. Okay, so the first cavalry unit we're going to go over today is the Chasseurs à Cheval. So this is actually a really formidable French cavalry unit, but actually most nations will have this kind of unit as well, which is just basically shooter cav. And if you select Russia, for example, you'll actually get a bonus with these kind of guys because they actually come in a larger number as opposed to the standard 45 unit. I believe it's 60 or 65, but it's slightly bigger. So what's interesting about these units is if you select this kind of cavalry, you'll see that they actually have a range, and this is because they have rifles and they can shoot on horseback. So this can be used for a lot of different cases. So for example, if you're in a tough line battle and you need some extra line units that are agile, fast, and can basically like loop around at a moment's notice, which is really good for flanking, you can basically just loop around, harass cavalry, harass units, and just basically have the first shot on them. So although these guys aren't very good in melee, for example, we can try and see if we can hit Matteo's troops without them hitting us. So for example, if I target the dragoons here, or here actually, my cavalry should be able to land a few shots before Matteo actually manages to hit me. And that's half his cavalry gone. And the French cav are generally strong too, so they'll actually be able to repel this. And while these guys fight it out, these ones will continue shooting at them, which could lead to a lot of friendly fire, so as always you have to be careful. Basically the best heavy cavalry that the Ottoman Empire have, which is the Salatar Guard. Now although these guys have lances and kind of work like lancers, an easy way to identify the difference between lancers, light cavalry, shooter cavalry, and heavy cavalry is to just simply look at the emblem. So if you look at this emblem right here, you can see that it's a solid filled horse head. A solid filled horse head indicates heavy cavalry, whereas kind of like this lance next to an empty horse head signifies lancers. A gun with a horse head obviously signifies shooter cav, and light cavalry, for example, will just be an empty horse head. And unfortunately I did not bring any light cavalry, but we'll look at that in a sec, or I'll just paste it right there. Alright, so before we go into a battle, to kind of show you guys at first hand how to kind of like handle cavalry, how to judge it, how to maneuver them, we'll go over one of the biggest problems that any cavalry player will face, and that's basically the presence of artillery. So whether it be howitzers or just regular cannons, the reason why these hurt so much is that That's just the AI fighting, but the reason is if a cannon or a howitzer hits a unit, for example, the unit will only just simply fall down. If any cannonball hits cavalry, for example, well, whether it actually kills the unit or not, it will kill them. Like, the game will register that unit is dead if they fall off the horse. And if a cannonball hits a horse, well, that horse is going to inevitably fall. So we'll just demonstrate that here. So if Roka, once you're going to, yeah, just target any cavalry unit you see. So right now my health is 39 out of 45 and 45. Yeah, there you go. That's half of them gone. So I hope you guys realize that a smart way to always play with cavalry is to just basically always stay out of range or out of sight when it comes to enemy artillery. So since these guys shoot straight, I'm going to put them behind this hill here. And that's a lot safer of a position. You see how that one just blocked? So if this was a howitzer, however, which can shoot over obstacles, it'd be a different story. I'd have to play out of range or in a forest potentially. And before we get into a battle, I just want to show off basically how you guys should be using lancers. Now, lancers are basically this kind of cavalry that is really good at having a charge bonus against enemy infantry or even other cavalry. However, they perform really bad once you actually get them into the physical melee phase. So how you're supposed to handle it generally is to just simply charge the enemy unit you see. There you go. So that was that was a successful example. So that happens, their morale drops, and as soon as you see their morale start climbing again, you want to run away. And this can be difficult to do. And once you get enough distance, turn around, go back in. Ideally, you want to hit them from a flank or the back. And there you go. Their morale really falls down. And that's basically ideally how you want to use the Lancer cavalry. Hey guys, so basically I decided to go into a battle, and it's specifically to show you guys some cavalry tactics that I've used, and I find that this battle is quite appropriate for going over them. And yeah, it'll make more sense. It makes more sense to do it this way rather than make a video kind of just playing with myself or with my friends and just making like pre-planned scenarios, because in reality you're gonna be in like battles like these where a lot is happening, and honestly the use of cavalry is heavily dependent on infantry. So we're just gonna take a look. I'm fighting as France, and this battle we're playing against Prussia. So interesting formation here. And yeah, so let's get into the cavalry. So for cavalry wise, I basically brought 2 Guard Chasseurs à Cheval, Carabiners, Polish Guard Lancers, and some more Chasseurs à Cheval. Using Shooter Cav is quite a strength if any nation has an option to use it. You'll see why soon. Polish Guard Lancers are the strongest Lancers in the game. Carabiners, just because I needed heavy cav, so that's quite important for me. If we look at the Prussian cav specifically, we see some Lancers, Brandenburg Uhlans or a DLC unit, which are free now. So you only really see 2 units of cavalry here, and this is to my advantage because, for one, Lancers can't really be in prolonged close quarter combat. They're only good for charging. And the second reason too is Prussian cav is just generally not as good or as powerful as French cav. And that just comes with experience. You just gotta know the levels of cavalry each nation has. So basically what Prussia's gonna do is Prussia's gonna kind of like formate a line here and join his 3 divisions. Me as a cavalry user, I'm already trying to harass this infantry that's kind of disordered with my Chasseurs à Cheval, and likewise I have 2 of the same on the either flank as well. If any trouble happens in the middle, I basically have my Carabiners and my Polish Guard Lancers that guard the center. and can act in any kind of way, whether it's breaking through their lines or whatnot. Obviously, you don't want to have your cavalry face, you know, square to where these guys can shoot, because they will outshoot your cavalry even if you have shooter cav, so make sure you pull them back. And yeah, so we'll go here. So here I make a pretty big turn. And that's just proved that even with shooter cav, light infantry has no chance of standing. So while this happens, you realize that the chasseurs de cheval cannot really, you know, stay in prolonged combat because, well, for one, there's lancers as well, and there are 2 squares. So basically, you make sure you pull these guys back. So you'll make sure to allow that to happen. So don't ever be afraid of pulling your cavalry back. That's one big point I can make. Especially when it comes for like strafing runs as well. Lancers, shooter cav, and even light cavalry, they're really good for that. You don't want to do this so much with heavy cav since they're very slow. So basically what happens here now is Prussia's shooting at me. I decide to do a charge to kind of catch him off guard. And that's basically what happens here. Biggest problem, and this was a mistake on my end, I did not select these cavalry to actually attack this musketeer unit. I actually went to attack the foot guards. So these guys are kind of just walking into them, which is not good. But it serves as a good distraction, and I'll tell you why. Whenever you make a move like this with cavalry, you notice how this guy forms square. Now this is a problem for the Prussian end, because when my cavalry is up here dealing huge and tremendous amounts of losses against the enemy in their business, obviously you'd think that forming square, you could shoot on the sides and kind of support the unit, as well as protect this unit from, you know, me deciding to, okay, let's move this cavalry and attack this guy. Now the reason why this square is a problem is because I got 2 fusiliers de ligne shooting at these guys. And what happens is if you form square, for one, you have less troops on this side shooting back, and for 2, they're all bunched up together, meaning that these guys have a smaller area to target and that more of their shots will land. So this square is actually going to be eaten up, and we'll see more of that in the future. So that was a nice charge. Now, while this chaos is ensuing and the Brandenburg Uhlans are doing their thing, I'm moving these guys on the flank. And like I said again, these guys form square, and although they're not getting shot at, this buys my Voltigeurs some time. Which I should have moved back, honestly, but either way, it's still less firepower they're facing from this end. Now there is one advantage to squares on his end, and that's just purely squares for some reason grant your musketeers more range, so maybe these guys weren't able to target them in the future anyways, but it's whatever. Now this is a bad part on my end, and well, we'll focus on what the Prussian cavalry is doing here, but also always make sure, and this is a mistake I made, where you put your cavalry. I did not realize this Prussian unit came back, and I kind of just stationed my cavalry here so they get shot at, which isn't really good. But we'll go back to this end, because I think this side's a little bit more important. So you see, this is another demonstration of the strength of the chasseurs de cheval. So they'll line up. These guys are too busy shooting these guys, and then so the Prussian guy is putting his Tovartzes. Now, you have to realize that French cavalry is just genuinely naturally strong, and they'll still be shooting, especially the guys in the back, while the other lancers are fighting it out. So although I lost a lot of guys, probably maybe like what, 11? I can't math. 16. The Tovartzes will lose anyways, and I have no problem with keeping my guys there because I know they'll fight it out. And I still keep your Polish guard. I'm still keeping my Polish Guard Lancers in reserve. So you see, these guys form square Once that happens, you gotta move your cav away. Don't keep them there. They're gonna lose. They're gonna lose against melee when it comes to squares. But you can use that to your advantage by having your Fusiliers immediately shoot at them. And you see how their morale drops regardless. And now here's a problem I saw earlier. So you might have saw these guys get chewed up, especially this line. Because, well, he's got elite foot guards here now. So what I do is I bust out the Polish Guard Lancers. Now Lancers are a bit of a controversial cavalry to use. With Lancers, like I showed earlier, you want to make sure you strafe and pull out. But sometimes that's difficult to do, especially if you're micromanaging a lot. So I'll charge my guys there, and you see that makes them form a square here. And the original reason, maybe I should have showed this a little bit better, but using the reason why this unit formed square was because my cavalry ran really close by them first, and the enemy opponent, Prussia, thought I was charging this unit. But now you can kind of realize and see, hey, I got still 2 full lines here, and there's 2 squares on either end, and this unit's preoccupied. So basically, this front is one, and the biggest concern are these remaining Prussian units here. And yeah, the general, you just target that guy. Enemy general's killed. That's all good. And that's it, you see, once you have your cavalry in the back of enemy lines like this, they're kind of useless. So the Brandenburg Uhlans are there, and basically the general death causes huge morale drop. So these musketeers are out, and these ones are also going to rout. So then I'm going to move my Polish Guard Lancers and do the best I can. And yeah, so he turns around his foot guards. It's just basically me getting caught. But that buys me time to also move my troops. And that's alright. Sometimes you're allowed to use cavalry to grant you additional time. And this is proof. Lancers can't fight in melee. It's Lancer versus Lancer. These guys are stuck. They're going to be fighting here literally for 10 hours. But regardless, I decided to make a charge. And it does impact morale. And you bring in the other cav as well. And you reform your lines. And that's basically kind of the effectiveness of how you have to use your cavalry in a battle. You know, it's not always like, do this scenario, click on this, use this unit. You can use any cavalry unit you want. It's just how you use them to your advantage. If you use it in a way to disorganize the enemy troops, and it gives you a plan of action for your other troops to move, which comes through experience, that definitely does the trick. Now here's another factor that really helps out in a battle. So you may notice that certain Prussian units or musketeers come back even after they run away. Whenever you rout a unit and their flag is blinking, that basically says, okay, they're running away, but there's a probability that they might muster up some courage and return. We don't want that. So what we do is, or what I do is, you can select your cavalry unit, your chasseurs for example, and have them just run them down. So, you know, shooting might be a bit difficult. But the foot guards for me, for example, were a really big concern for me, because 49 out of 120 is a pretty big number. So they could easily come back, and since they're elites, kind of change and dictate the rest of the battle. And my problem was that, well, yeah, you see they come back. So it's important you charge them. And lastly, also make sure you have your general available to keep the morale of your troops high. These guys don't have a general, hence why I'm kind of winning this battle. I also brought Marshal Ney, but I'll make a separate video on how marshals can really impact your decisions on the battle. So anyways, both my cavalry And the foot guards ended up routing again. Usually if a unit routes twice, they won't come back. So you can kind of assume this one's safe. And this is just basically a race for destroying these guys as quick as possible. And yeah, this was a close battle. I want to thank my Prussian opponent for putting up a hell of a fight. It's actually too close for comfort, but that's 1v1s for you. So thank you, Prussia's Glory. And I hope you guys learned something from this cavalry video. If you want to ask for some more specific cavalry tactics, feel free to shoot me or leave a comment down below. Not shoot me, but like shoot me a message. But you guys get it. Just leave a comment. And yeah, I'll get another Napoleon battle soon, and we'll have some more content. So yeah, till then, take care, guys.